guys, Josh from SoccerReviewsForYou.com, bringing you my personal opinions of the Nike Hypervenom Phinish. Now, for those that are unfamiliar with this series, this is not my regular review style video where I go over all the tech specs and explain every little detail. This is a series that's about my personal opinions, my personal preferences, and what I truly think about a shoe. Now, you guys really seem to be enjoying this series on my channel, so if you do want to continue seeing it happen, be sure to leave your suggestions down below in the comment section for which shoe you'd like to see featured in the next personal opinions vid. Whichever one gets the most amount of requests is the one that will get featured. So, today's video, Nike Hypervenom Phinish. What do I truly think of this shoe? The Hypervenom Phinish is a very good shoe. If you're talking about the new Hypervenom line in general, this being one of two top-end models, a lot of people will view the Phantom 2 as the better of the two just because it is at the higher price point and it does have that kind of more cutting-edge mid-cut design, whereas this is kind of a traditional low-cut. The exact same heel cut and design is what we found on the original Hypervenom Phantom, but in reality, there really isn't much of a difference between the Phinish and the Phantom other than the mid-cut design and of course $75. Phantom 2 $275, Phinish $200. So what's the better value? I would say the Phinish. There's no performance benefit to the mid-cut design of the Phantom 2. It has a different fit in the heel because of that mid-cut design, and the middle portion of the shoe where the laces are, where you would normally find the tongue, is filled in with Flyknit as well. Again, none of those elements offer any kind of performance benefit. It changes the feel of the shoe a little bit. So if you really want that mid-cut design, maybe you can justify spending the extra $75. But ultimately, the Phinish is going to perform just as well as the Phantom 2 because everything else about the two shoes is exactly the same. So in terms of, like I said, best bang for your buck for a high-end shoe in the new Hypervenom line, the Phinish is the way to go, and it is my personal preference if I'm wearing a pair of the new Hypervenoms. I just feel more comfortable with this kind of low-cut design over the mid-cut model that is the Phantom 2 that honestly is somewhat unnecessary. It really doesn't need to be a mid-cut shoe. This could have very easily been the Phantom 2. In terms of the actual Hypervenom line itself, the new Hypervenom line, I should say, now that the shoe's been out for a little while, the hype has kind of died down around a new Hypervenom because obviously the first Hypervenom ran its course for a pretty long time and people were very excited about a new model, and there's been a lot of controversy as of late around the new Hypervenom line. The biggest thing obviously being Neymar kind of switching out of Hypervenom Phantom 2s into Vapor 10s, and now he's in a custom variation of what looks to be a Hypervenom Phinish. But from what I can tell, and I can't completely confirm this, obviously I've never held the shoes in my hands or tried them myself, but based on what you can tell from pictures, they look to be Vapor 10s with a slightly off-centered lacing system, so a similar layout to the upper with what you're going to find here on the Phinish where the laces are slightly off-centered, but it looks to be a Vapor 10 upper with graphics that of course mimic a Hypervenom. So he's technically the main poster boy and he's no longer wearing the Hypervenom. And of course, that's just one player. There's plenty of guys still wearing the regular Hypervenom Phantom 2 as well as the Phinish variations. You expect pro models, especially big names like Neymar, pro players, sorry, especially big names like Neymar to kind of get their customization because they have that option. They might as well take advantage of it. Is this a case of Neymar absolutely hating the new Hypervenom Phantom 2 as well as the new Hypervenom Phinish? It very well could be, and based on what he's done, I would say it's very likely. With that being said, again, that doesn't make this shoe a bad shoe. It just means it's not what Neymar likes. He probably prefers the feel of the Mercurials, which is why Nike has made him a custom makeup. At the end of the day, he's getting paid to wear whatever line Nike chooses for him to represent. It happens to be the Hypervenoms. If he doesn't like the Hypervenoms, they're going to make him a custom shoe, which is what they've done. But again, shoes at the end of the day are all about personal preference, and that's how you should go about choosing. When you look at this new Hypervenom line, and this is the problem that I have, not just with the Phinish, but also with the Phantom 2, it completely changes what the original Phantom was all about in terms of feel, characteristics, and just the general sensation of wearing the shoes. The original Hypervenom line, if you remember, going back 2 years now, it launched with controversy of its own in that it was replacing the T90 line that definitely wasn't Nike's strongest seller, but a lot of people were longtime followers of the T90 line. It had been around for quite some time. It was my personal favorite line from Nike, so the original Hypervenom had a lot to live up to, and it came out and introduced a lot of interesting stuff. That mesh-based synthetic upper with the polyurethane coating on top was very interesting. It felt really good, had a sock-like level of comfort similar to the new Flyknit models from Nike, and ultimately was a shoe that a lot of people liked. It had its flaws in that the shoe did overstretch. It lacked structure in the upper, so responsiveness and rollover were some issues in the long run, especially once the shoe did have some time to stretch. But like I said, the general sensation and kind of feeling of wearing that shoe was very, very good. So people obviously were excited about these new Hypervenom models, which we now have in the Phinish and the Phantom 2. And really, those two shoes completely change everything that we had from the original Phantom. Now, I've said this before in videos, so some of you guys may have heard me say this, but I really think that the new Hypervenom model, whether it be the Phinish or the Phantom 2, is ultimately a better performing shoe than what we got with the original Phantom. With that being said, I personally prefer the feel of the original Phantom in comparison to the new Phinish and Phantom 2 models. Why is that? These are completely different. You're getting what they have labeled as a Nike Skin Upper, which I personally think is a little bit misleading based on how the shoe actually is in comparison to that original Phantom. It's not really a mesh-based synthetic anymore. There technically is some mesh at the base, but it's very, very thin, and it's actually pretty hard when they put all the coatings over top and add the Flywire as well. And I have no issues with the Flywire there. It's just the general kind of hardness of the upper. It doesn't necessarily lack flexibility, but it certainly lacks softness, and it doesn't provide the most kind of comforting sensation on your foot, if that makes any sense. They're not uncomfortable, but they don't feel soft, they don't feel flexible. It just doesn't feel like it's working with your foot, working with the bend of your foot, if that makes any sense. So they fit well, they're comfortable once you get used to them, but it's not the same type of feel that you got from that original Phantom, which was a thin shoe that was soft and just moved very naturally with your foot. This is kind of the exact opposite of that. So if you're coming from the original Phantom and you're looking at the new Hypervenom models, whether it's the Phinish or the Phantom 2, the experience is going to be completely different. If you want different and you want ultimately the better performer, you're probably going to like the new Hypervenom models. They're very responsive. They lock your foot in place really nicely. It's a thin type of sensation on the ball. They're not quite as thin as what you're going to get from something like a Nike Mercurial Vapor 10, but like the Vapor 10, it really doesn't have any padding to it. So it's thin, but has some thickness, and the upper is kind of hard, so it's kind of unusual. It's a really, really difficult shoe to kind of describe and compare to anything else. But if you're listening to what I'm saying and you try them on for yourself, you'll kind of know exactly what I mean. Just because, like I said, it is kind of an unusual shoe. It's difficult to describe, and I can't really compare it to anything, which, like I said, makes it difficult for me to tell you exactly how it feels. But responsiveness is great, locks your foot in place. The Flywire cables are positioned perfectly in such a way that you get good responsiveness. The upper does not stretch or roll over in any way at all. You don't have any pressure on the sides of the shoe from the actual cables themselves. The shoe fits pretty well. Your foot's locked in place, no heel slippage. It maintains the exact same sole plate and stud pattern that we found on the original Phantom, at least visually, because what they have done here is made the actual sole plate a little bit more flexible, which is something that I really like about the new Hypervenom model, whether it be the Phinish or the Phantom 2 versus the original Phantom 1. But like I said, at the end of the day, it's a completely different shoe, a completely different experience, which is upsetting to some people, including myself. I just liked the feel of the original Phantom 1. I really wish they would have come up with something that was more like that shoe, but obviously address some of the problems that that first shoe had. And it's unusual because if you guys have seen my video on the Hypervenom X Finale model, that features a Nike Skin Upper that is modified more like the original Phantom 1 with the addition of these Flywire cables that I really, really like, and honestly don't see why they couldn't have made that at least the Phinish variation of the shoe and maybe made the Phantom 2 what it is now. But that's something I would have personally liked to see. There's really no answer as to why Nike did not go that route, because obviously they did develop something that was more along the lines of what we got from the original Phantom, but ultimately decided to go with this final design as what they would release to retail. So that's pretty much it in terms of what I think about the Phinish. It's a good shoe. It's certainly not for me. If you want something that is responsive, locked in, and kind of a firm upper, you're going to like what you get with the Phinish. But if that sounds awful to you, I would stay away from the new Hypervenom line altogether. So that's what I have to say, guys. Let me know your opinions and experiences with the Hypervenom Phinish or the Hypervenom Phantom 2. Again, I'm not saying that this is a bad shoe by any means. It's just not what we got from the original Hypervenom, and for me personally, it just isn't the shoe for me. So again, let me know your opinions down below. If you enjoyed this video, found it helpful and informative, be sure to support it with a like. Again, leave your suggestions for future personal opinions videos, which products you'd like to see featured. Whichever one gets the most requests is the one that I will make next. Subscribe if you haven't already for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. You can find all my social media information down below in the description as well. And other than that, guys, hope you enjoyed today's video. And as always, thanks for watching.